Hey, good morning, YouTube. Working on this, my buddy's 1000 RZR again today. We did a few weeks ago, we did the high clearance A-arms on front and back, and also jacked up the springs on it because they're way too light for the two of us. And while we were doing the A-arms front and back, we didn't check the wheel bearing, and on our first ride we just completely wrecked this side. CV joints got destroyed, the hub got destroyed, the brakes got destroyed, of course the bearing is destroyed. So today I'm going to go ahead and take this apart and install a new axle, new hub, wheel bearings all the way around, and brake pads for the, I believe these are just for rear. Yeah, looks like just the rears. So that's what we're into today. And let me get this thing off the ground and we'll get to work. Nice. All right, let's get this off. Alright, so first thing we got to do is pull out this axle nut. The cotter pin's already gone because we had this apart on the trail to see if what parts we could get, if we could get them there, and we couldn't. So some of this is already taken apart. And then pull out the axle nut, and then we'll be able to take off the two control arms in the back. There's a bolt up on top and a bolt on the bottom. They'll come off. The caliper comes off. We'll start getting this hub off. So let me get into it and we'll show you what's going on. Yeah, no, to get the brake caliper off, there's two bolts behind the hub here, and once you get those off, this whole thing will come off. So I gotta find out what size they are and loosen them off. All right, with the bolts out of the back of the caliper, it just comes off. This pad seems to be okay, but there's only one of them, so we must have left the other one behind on the trail when we're taking this apart. Okay, now what I want to do is I just got to pull this caliper and hub assembly off. So the hub got destroyed. Bearings were bad so long that it just destroyed the whole hub. So I need to push these studs out, getting these out, and I'll be back in a minute. And just with a couple of, I know you're not really supposed to hit on the top of the stud here, but it's got quite a bit of a taper. So even if I did mushroom this just a tiny bit, I would still be able to get a lug nut over. You can put a lug nut on here upside down and hit it that way, but I just did these two in just a couple of taps. It just popped right out. So they just pop right out, and then the hub is garbage. So I'll go get the new one and see if we can't put it on. Alright, so I put the studs in by hand and just tapped on the back with a hammer, and now I want to be able to pull them down. So I just got some scrap here. I'm going to tighten this down here and then draw it in the rest of the way. Shouldn't take much. That's good right there. And I'll do this with the other three and we'll be good to go. Yeah, that's good. Right back. Before I do anything, I'm just going to take the rest of this hub off. Here's the axle that's shot. It's probably not shot, but he got a new one because I think the boot got ripped, and he just wanted to make this machine like new on this side. So we're gonna go ahead and pull this off and get it on the bench because there's a C-clip in here and the old race from the bearing that got shot is in here, and then I pushed the bearing in here and not on the outer hub. So get this off and we'll get it on the bench. Alright, I gotta interrupt the video for 1 second. I was editing and I noticed that one key part of the video was missing, so I came back out here to show you the axle. Getting it out of the machine. In the next scene you'll see that the only thing left in the machine is the cup, and the reason for that is when you are pulling on the axle, you push it in, yank it out, push it in, yank it out, and the whole cup should come out of the machine. But if it doesn't, then you run into what I did, and I'll take this apart real quick to show you. Okay, on the end of the axle is a small groove, and in that groove is that C-clip. On the end of the cup is a small groove, and on the end of that is that C-clip. So when you start yanking on this as one unit, you're hoping that that one lets loose and the whole thing comes out. But if that one lets loose, then you're stuck what I have to do, which is cut the strap off the boot, pull the axle out. There's another ring on the inside of this lip. Pull that out, and then this whole system, this whole thing will slide out. And in the very next part, you'll see what I have to do next. So there you go. All right. Well, I don't wish this on my worst enemy. This rear axle cup was the biggest nightmare I've done in forever. So I'll just show you what I did to get it out, and hopefully after I put on the Loctite, or not the Loctite, the anti-seize, the new one, on the new one, it'll pop in and later in the future it can come back out. But let me go get the things that took me to pull it out, and I'll show you what I did step by step. Alright, so first thing I did was grab my acetylene torch and cut 2 holes in it, in the cup. This having a aluminum belly pan was okay, but plastic belly pans, you got to watch out for melting, and I just wouldn't advise it anyways. There's got to be other ways to pull this off, but this worked for me. So once I put 2 holes in it, I was able to get a punch in here and go across the 2 holes like that. Okay, and once I did that, I grabbed a slide hammer with a hook on it, and I grabbed a hold behind the punch and yanked on it. And I yanked on it for, I don't know, over a stretch of 2 or 3 hours, and I didn't get it to budge. You know, they move up and down like this because in the spline they're loose, but the problem is they have the C-clip, okay, and that's what holds it in place. You get past the lip inside there, and then that holds it in place. So you need to, you know, just with brute force, just yank on this, and then that C-clip collapses, and then it will able to come out the hole. Well, the issue that I was having is, I don't know if it was just bouncing or whatever, but it wasn't coming out of the hole. So what I ended up doing was, and I don't even know, I mean, this could have been horrible for the machine, but it ended up working out. I took a screwdriver and I stuck it between the cup case, and you see how that moved? See how it moved to the left? And I tapped on that a few times with a hammer. So now I got the cup cocked in there. And then what I did was I took my slide hammer and I put it on the deal. Now, I just put this cup back in without the ring on it, so it's just gonna pop back out. And with, I don't know, 12 good whacks, I got the thing to pop out. Wasn't that dramatic, it was slow, because that clip was kind of, you know, pressured inside the hole the entire way, but it came out. And I didn't do any damage. Luckily, I didn't do any damage to the case. I didn't do any damage. I didn't know if I was gonna, you know, end up pulling the case apart right there or what. I mean, I was hammering on this thing as hard as I can with that slide hammer, but it finally came out. So now, to install the new one, the new axle, I'm just gonna slather this with anti-seize. I already cleaned that out with carburetor cleaner and blew it all out, cleaned it all out. This will be, or the new one will be just slathered with anti-seize and put into place, and then hopefully if we ever have that trouble again, it'll pop back out. But alright, where was I? This hub, this outer hub. I'm trying to get the bearing out of it, or the bearing race out of it, and it's like 1.5 inches thick. And there's these 3 indentations on the backside that you put a punch on, and you can drive the bearing out. Well, this area here was wiped out completely when the bearing let loose, and the CV joint was rubbing on that and just kind of got rid of all that metal. And when I tapped on the bearing, or pounded on the bearing I should say, the rest of it all started chipping out. Some of that is actually bearing race chipped out. And as you can see, I got it to move just a tiny little bit all the way around. And I'll get it the rest of the way out, and then we can decide from there whether or not we want to reuse this part or get a new one. I think get a new one, because judging by this entire axle assembly, boots, CV joints on both sides, both splined areas, all the bearings, everything, was $68. Very cheap. I'm not sure what this cost, but I would hope it would be, you know, around the same amount of money, or maybe less. So we'll figure it out from there. So I'm going to take this apart and we'll go. Alright, well, I ended up reusing this hub. There's the relief there for the punch that I just made a little bit, cleaned it up a little better. Relief there for the punch. That one is completely gone because the metal around it wore out. But I can't, I mean, for this little section right here, even though you can see that outer lip, half of it is still behind the rest of the lip, so I think it's fine. I just went and priced it out. These are actually a lot more expensive than the axle. The axle is $68, these are $168, so I was able to push it in all the way, and you actually used the old race fit in here and just hammered on it side to side and got it to go in, so we're good to go. So this is back together and it works good, and we're about to install the axle, so I'll be right back. Alright, time to put the axle in. I cleaned out all the grooves with a pick, and then I sprayed it out with carb cleaner, and then I put some anti-seize in there, and I just slathered this with anti-seize, even a little bit on the back of the cup, so that way if we ever pull this back out, it will not get stuck. And the way you put these in, you get it started on the thread, and I gotta go get a mallet. I'm gonna put the nut on backwards on the end of the shaft. Okay. And then with a couple of whacks, it should pop in. I say should. There it goes. Alright. Once it's in there, it's in there. and then that's good. So now, alright, so I put the brake pads in, I compressed the piston down, they just slid on nice and easy. Just compress this with your hand back, and then these kind of fit through that groove and over those posts. And then just take I just took a screwdriver in between here and here and just pry it a little bit, and then push those pistons back in on the caliper. So now they'll go over the top of the rotor real nice and easy. So I'm going to go ahead and get the rotor, or no, get the hub put on, and then start thinking about the rotor. So I'll be right back. All right, I can go ahead and put the hub on now. Just put the axle into the hole here, and then these, which is the back. I gotta figure out, these two holes here are where the caliper goes. They bolt on here, so this aims towards the back. This goes over the top, and then put the bolts in. Remember to put your caliper on before you put your arms back on, the bottom one especially, because the bolt gets in the way. Not to that point yet, but just try to remember to do that. Definitely more difficult to put these back nuts and bolts on with the axle still in, but it's kind of a pain to pull out on this arm and try to yank the axle out through the hub. So I'd rather just put it together like it is now. And let's do that. Because you can still reach back here. But it's a lot easier without the axle in the way. And also, these are, I thought this was all, I knew it was going to be metric, but I thought it was going to be a little bit more common size, because this takes a 15 millimeter, and a lot of the wrenches and sets don't even come with a 15 anymore. You go from 14 to 16. Or from 14 to 17 sometimes, but take a 15 mil, and then I'll tighten these down, and then we'll start working on putting the brakes back together. So I won't bore you with the tightening part. There it goes. So I'm just going to tighten her up. So I just kind of seated the bearing, kind of like that, and then backed it off. Now you can see I got to back off just a tiny touch, and I'll put the pin through it, and then that's done. So now is the brake caliper before these bars go back on, and I'll just do it now. Top one not so much, not a big deal, but the bottom one is definitely in the way. So make sure you, well, it's not a huge deal, you just got to drop that arm down to do it, but you know, once you put it back together, I hate having to go back and redo something. So they're on. Now he's going. I didn't take him out of adjustment, so shouldn't have any issues there. I have these go in both sides of this ball joint here. Make sure you don't lose those. And it looks like they want this to go under the brake. No, that doesn't make sense, does it? Let's see. Yeah, that's how it goes, just like that. Yep. Alright. Where's the other one? In it. I knew that. Back that. I gotta back that off just a touch so that hole lines up. Yeah, just gotta back that up just a tiny little touch so that hole lines up, and then put the tire on. Okay, so this job took way longer than I thought it was gonna take because of getting that axle out was a pain, and the bearing being nothing left but the race. The race was a nightmare to get out, but I learned a few things while doing that. Since it is such a thick bearing, you really need to, if you don't have the proper punch or press to get it out, those 3 relief holes on the back, you only got to tap just a tiny little bit on each one, because the bearing won't come out if it's trying to get kinked inside the bore. So you just need to go around and be patient and just tap it on those 3 little spots, and the bearing will eventually slide out. And then putting the new one in is pretty basic. Use the old race, put it in by hand as far as you can. Use the old race and pound it in the rest of the way, and then or if you have a press, use a press. I just don't happen to have one. And then put it back together. So that'll do it for this one. So please rate, comment, subscribe, and have a great day.